Welcome back to the Gridiron, guys, and today we are going to be going over our second draft strategy. The first being the Travis Kelce draft strategy that we went over about a month and a half ago. And if you haven't already watched that video, make sure to go watch it now. But if you have not and you don't plan on it, we're going to be going over the 0 wide receiver draft strategy. Arguably the best draft strategy in my opinion, one that I'm going to be using in almost all of my leagues this year because of how effective it is, because it offers elite upside with your draft. And let's get into it right away. And the 0 wide receiver strategy is basically when the first 3 or even 4 or 5 of your picks of your team are not wide receivers, as the name would make sense to say. Usually you go running back, but some people take the strategy even further and go tight end and QB even before drafting a wide receiver. I don't tend to do that, but I understand why you may. So this strategy is very effective because the running back depth is always thin, especially this year where I think there's a large drop-off after the top few guys. It's hard to find elite backs. And there are plenty of wide receivers in the 4th and 5th round that I'm very comfortable with as my wide receiver 1 and 2. And if you have not already done so, make sure to watch my most recent upload prior to this of my undervalued wide receiver video to go get in-depth analysis on some of the guys I'm going to be saying today that are great wide receiver 1 options in the 4th and 5th round. But the risk to the strategy, why you may not be using it, is that the running back position is much more volatile from year to year than the wide receiver position. The wide receivers, the elite wide receivers, top 10 wide receivers, are usually there every single year, like Julio Jones, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Michael Thomas. These are guys that are going to be up there every single year, whereas the running backs, they fall up and down those rankings quite frequently throughout their careers, and there's much less consistency, and there are no safe picks. But if you're able to get if you're able to hit on your first 3 picks that are all running backs, you're going to have a very solid fantasy roster. And the big thing with that is picking the right running backs. So today I'm going to be mocking over a few situations on how to effectively use the 0 wide receiver strategy to maximize its potential, but also have some safe picks while you do that. So for the sake of this video, let's say we're drafting from the 6th slot because I want to be missing out on the top 3 guys in Saquon, Zeke, and Christian McCaffrey because that makes this video far too easy because they're very good. So say we're drafting from the 6th slot, and the players that are gone are McCaffrey, Saquon, Zeke, Michael Thomas, and Kamara. So we're sitting there, and the highest running back left on my board is Derrick Henry. And as for the 0 wide receiver strategy goes, with your first running back pick in the 1st round, you're going off only upside. I mean, because you're going to be drafting 2 more running backs after this, so it's okay to take a risk. You're not going to be trying to take the safer pick in the 1st round. And I guess a safer running back would be, there are no safe 1st round running backs, but I would say a safer running back is a guy like Austin Eckler. He doesn't have top 5 potential really because the Chargers offense is not going to be as high scoring as it was last year likely. The yards will be down, and I don't think he'll get the rushing work that many expect. I'd say he's a pretty safe bet to be around 8 to 12 in this year's finish. But a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, for example, who's going to be flying up boards lately, you can easily draft him with the running back 1 in this strategy because you have 2 running backs behind him. So if he's not as good as you expect, you have 2 other guys who could be outperforming their ADP. But for the sake of this video, 6th pick, we take Derrick Henry, highest running back on my board. I have him behind the core 3, and I have him above Alvin Kamara. So we take Derrick Henry with our first pick. And we're going on the turn, and we have pick 18. And say we are going to pick 18, and the top, we'll say, say 8 or 9 running backs, maybe even 10 are gone. I really, really like a few guys in the middle of the 2nd round this year. I love Josh Jacobs and Miles Sanders as an RB2. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be fantastic. being the sole running back in Kansas City, and I would love to have him as an RB2. All those guys are great value. We're gonna act like guys like Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb is gone, even though I'm not that high on Nick Chubb. Joe Mixon's gone. So we're gonna take Josh Jacobs. So we're starting out our draft with Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs. Both project, I have them as my rankings as the RB4 and the RB7. Both project to be bell cow backs. Not as good in the passing game as you may like, but they're going to be getting so many touches on the ground. I think Jacobs has room to improve in the passing game. That these are guys that are going to give you a great advantage over your opponent because the running back talent, as I mentioned, drops off. The running back 20 in my rankings is Chris Carson. I'm just showing you the running back depth compared to the wide receiver depth. My running back 20 is Chris Carson. This is a guy who has had fumbling issues throughout his career. Very, very bad fumbling issues last year. He's coming off injury. He's in a crowded backfield where Rashad Penny will be coming back early to midseason. They added Carlos Hyde. I mean, Chris Carson is a high re-injury risk because he had, I'm pretty sure, a ankle injury or leg injury that is shown to have like a 25 to 30% chance of re-injury. Chris Carson's not a sure thing. He can get hurt. He can get benched to fumbles. The Seattle Seahawks might start passing the ball more, running back by committee. And this is a guy being drafted as an RB2 in most formats. And you're not sure about much of anything that he's going to give you right now because he's coming off injury and he's a high injury risk. That's the running back 20. Go to wide receiver 20. My receivers ranked in the range of, let's say, 18 to 22 are DK Metcalf, Odell Beckham, Devontae Parker, Courtland Sutton, and Tyler Lockett. I feel far better about those guys than my running back 20, 19, 18. DK Metcalf broke out last year, has such high upside. Odell Beckham may not be what we used to think he was, but he still is going to be a consistent around 1,000-yard receiver. Devontae Parker, I have him at wide receiver 19. I mean, he finished the last 15 weeks with Ryan Fitzpatrick. He finished the season as the wide receiver 2. Courtland Sutton, I think, is being vastly overdrafted. And at wide receiver 20, I have him same as Chris Carson. And I think that he will easily come around 900 to 1,000 yards. Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 21. He's been so consistent the last couple of years. I'm just showing you that you can get such good wide receiver value around the same place that you'd be getting a running back. That's pretty shaky. I mean, guys like Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, I talked about that last video. Guys with ADPs of 3rd round, 4th round. Cooper Kupp finished as a wide receiver 1 last year. The year prior, when he got injured, he was on pace to finish as a wide receiver 1 once again. Robert Woods, his per game efficiency over the last 7 to 8 games, once Brandon Cook started to get injured and the Rams started to switch their passing offense, was around 1,500 plus yards. I mean, those are 2 guys who can finish as a wide receiver 1. So say we go back to our mock drafts. We have Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, and say in the 3rd round, I don't know, guys who I like in the 3rd round, maybe some guys fall. Clyde's ADP is probably not going to be there. Let's say David Johnson, maybe a Leonard Fournette. I'm not that high on Leonard Fournette. Let's say we take David Johnson, who I really, really like in the 3rd round. You can take whatever 3rd round running back you would like, but I like David Johnson in the 3rd round for opportunity, for a bounce back season, for the passing work. I put out a video on David Johnson. Make sure to watch that if you're skeptical on why I take David Johnson in the 3rd round. Well, let's say we have Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, and David Johnson in the first 3 rounds. You have phenomenal running backs. All 3 guys should be seeing 300 plus touches. The first 2 running backs are really safe. We can take a riskier option in David Johnson with our 3rd pick, who's not even that risky. And now we're in the 4th and 5th round. And we can draft wide receivers from the likes of DJ Chark, Cooper Kupp, potentially Calvin Ridley, Odell Beckham Jr. if he falls, Stephon Diggs, Tyler Lockett, Robert Woods, maybe even Amari Cooper if he falls a little bit. Probably not Amari Cooper. A.J. Brown could be there. I mean, those are phenomenal wide receivers. All of them should be 1,000 yards plus. And what's the difference really between, let's say, I don't know, a borderline top 10 wide receivers right now are guys like Allen Robinson, Juju Smith-Schuster. They're around 13, 14. And the difference between Devontae Parker, Tyler Lockett, Calvin Ridley, I don't see much of a difference. Whereas if you're talking about a borderline RB1 in Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, Kenyon Drake compared to running back 21 through like 24, there's a big difference between Aaron Jones and I have David Montgomery, or Kenyon Drake and Chris Carson, or Dalvin Cook and Melvin Gordon. I mean, there's a huge drop-off in talent and risk, and you don't draft your fantasy team to be in the middle of the league. You draft to win. And drafting these running backs is a strategy to win. If you have 3 running backs who finish as an RB1, and you have that potential because you're drafting 2 running backs which are ranked in the top 12, and if your third running back, minus David Johnson, who I believe will finish as an RB1, if your third running back finishes an RB1, and you have 3 RB1s for the year, you're going to win your league. It's as simple as that. Because the wide receiver depth is so good. You can go wide receiver 3 times right after the running backs. And I'm sure your wide receiver core won't be what you want it to be, but it will be very, very good if you pick the right wide receivers. And there is so much depth. I put out deep sleeper videos and undervalued wide receiver videos on late round guys such as Jameson Crowder, Emmanuel Sanders, Deshaun Jackson. Make sure to go back and watch those. I think all of those guys are going to be phenomenal. Brandon Ayuk. I mean, those are guys that are going to easily outperform their ADP, give you very, very consistent startable numbers for wide receivers, and that makes this strategy so good. It's a pass-first league, and the wide receiver position reflects that. But say you do not want to go wide receiver after your first 3 running backs. I'm okay with going tight end here to try to get another position in which you're going to have a weekly advantage at. In the 4th round, you could potentially be getting a guy like Mark Andrews, Darren Waller, even Zach Ertz. And those guys are going to be giving you a positional advantage over everyone in the league besides the owners who have Kelsey and Kittle. And I mean, I think Andrews and Waller give you elite upside. Ertz is a little bit lower of a ceiling, but much higher floor. But I mean, Waller scored 3 touchdowns last year. I don't know if he's a scoring machine. We don't know. He's only put up 1 good year. But he has the potential to be scoring 8-9 touchdowns with those high reception numbers and high yardage numbers. I think Baltimore's going to pass more. Mark Andrews should be a beneficiary of that. And he's also a great player. So you can go tight end after your first 3 running back picks, or even QB. Now, I'm always fond of waiting on a QB because I think there's such great value outside the top 12 quarterbacks. But you can go QB there too, because the wide receiver position is that deep. And I mean, late round running backs that are being drafted in the 8th to 10th round are the likes of Jordan Howard, Sony Michel, Alexander Madison, Marlon Mack, Darius Geis. Those are my running backs ranked at around 30 to 34. My wide receivers ranked at 30 to 34 are Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin, Darius Slayton, and Julian Edelman, compared to Jordan Howard, Sony Michel, Marlon Mack, Alexander Madison. It's not even comparable. After the top 32 starting running backs, there are barely any guys you could find to draft that'll even be consistent startable options. It's few and far between. Receivers are so deep this year. You can wait on receivers. And I mean, you can wait on QBs as well. And if you have running back and tight end early, the 2 positions that don't have a lot of depth, and you hit on those picks, you hit on your running backs, you hit on your tight ends, and you're able to wait on a QB and wide receiver, you're going to have a phenomenal team. Just to add some QBs and wide receivers in the late rounds that I think are great options to complete this strategy before I give out my first mock drafts for the whole team. I mean, outside my top 12 quarterbacks, I have Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff, Daniel Jones, Ryan Tannehill, Ben Roethlisberger, Baker Mayfield. Those are all guys who I have faith in to be a QB1 throughout parts of the year. Streaming a QB is also an option. There's plenty of guys this year. The QB position is as deep as ever. And for wide receivers, guys that I like in deep rounds, guys like Michael Pittman, Justin Jefferson for some rookies, Deshaun Jackson, Randall Cobb, Brandon Cooks has great potential. Brandon Ayuk, I mentioned. Darius Slayton, Emmanuel Sanders, Jalen Rieger, Marquise Hollywood Brown, even Jarvis Landry, Michael Gallup, Marvin Jones, I love. I put a video out on him. Those are all guys I love to finish out a 0 wide receiver draft. And now I'm going to read to you a mock draft I was doing earlier this week on a 0 wide receiver strategy that I think I turned out extremely well, and I really liked my team. My team from top to bottom is Aaron Rodgers at QB, Derrick Henry, and Kenyon Drake at running back, even though now I would probably replace Kenyon Drake with Miles Sanders or Josh Jacobs. I changed my mind on that pick. Receivers Cooper Kupp and DJ Chark, I think, are very good for 4th and 5th round picks. David Johnson as my flex. Jared Cook as my tight end. On my bench is stacked, I think, with wide receivers of Devontae Parker, Jameson Crowder, Emmanuel Sanders, Alshon Jeffrey, who's now in the PUP, so I wouldn't draft him, and Cole Beasley. And I have running backs of Damian Williams, who opted out, and Carlos Hyde. But I mean, that team is great. Your receivers, after not drafting a receiver with the first 3 picks, are Cooper Kupp, DJ Chark, Devontae Parker, Jameson Crowder, and Emmanuel Sanders. That is really good wide receivers for neglecting the position for the entire draft. You wait on a QB, you can get Aaron Rodgers in the 10th round. I mean, he may be declining, but he's still a great option. Jared Cook in the 7th round is a tight end who has elite touchdown upside. I think that team is a team that could win a lot of fantasy leagues come this season. 0 wide receiver strategy is a one with high upside, and it can also bomb because I mentioned before, running backs have a high bust rate, but you have to take the running backs that you have faith in. Quickly, I'm going to cover running backs that I think have a high bust rate in the first round. Guys that I think are very risky picks in the early running backs are Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, Todd Gurley, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has a lot of bust potential. Chris Carson, Melvin Gordon. Those are all guys that I would try to steer away from in the strategy. I don't really like most of them for their current ADP. But as I mentioned, the 0 wide receiver strategy is a strategy that I will be implementing on most of my drafts come this year. And I think it is a very effective strategy. And stay tuned for more draft strategy videos. I'm going to be putting out a 0 running back strategy soon, so you can compare the 0 wide receiver to 0 running back and see which one fits your fantasy mentality when you attack a draft. That'll be out in a few days. But as always, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. What do you think of the 0 wide receiver draft strategy? Let me know. And make sure to check us out on Insta because we're going to be putting out a lot of fantasy content there for daily uploads, and whereas YouTube, we're every couple of days. And our Instagram is gridiron_guys_YT. Make sure to drop a follow for more fantasy content. And stay tuned for our 0 running back video come a few days.